What do you do when your sourdough starter fails? You make it over. That's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days. It's very easy to get a sourdough starter going. All you need are 2 ingredients, water and flour. Your flour does need to be unbleached because we are trying to get the natural yeasts that are in flour to create that bubbling that's going to give the rise to your sourdough. I like to use a combination of wheat flour and all-purpose flour. Now when I'm making a specific bread, I'll use a specific type of flour, like an einkorn or spelt, or a combination of those things. But in the very beginning, just to get my starter going, I like to use those 2 flours. I also would suggest getting a scale. I find that using a scale and weighing things gives me a more accurate sourdough starter. Some people have used just measuring out cups, and that's fine. If that's the way you're comfortable doing it, you can. If you don't have a scale, you don't really need one, but this is just the way that I prefer to do it. So we're going to start out with 100 grams of flour. So I'm going to do 50 of the white all-purpose and 50 of the whole wheat. And then I'm going to add 150 grams of warm water. And then as each day goes by, the ingredient will change, or really the quantity of the water is going to change based on how much activity. Now, activity is the rise and fall of your yeast in your dough mixture, in your starter mixture. And that's going to depend on where you live, how warm your house is, and what flours you're using as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just getting my scale set to grams. I'm going to put my glass jar on the scale, and I'm going to zero it out, and we're going to get started from there. So I'm using a half a cup, but I want it to be 50 grams. So I'm going to measure it. And you'll see the difference in the type of flours you use. The quantities will be different. So that's 50 grams. So that was about 1/4 cup, roughly. Now we're going to do the white. And again, we're going to measure out 50. All right, I'm at 100 grams of flour now total between the 2. All right, so I'm going to add 150 grams of warm water. It's 250 total. All right, and now I'm just going to mix this together. Scrape down the sides, make sure you're getting everything incorporated. If you leave a little bit of the flour, that's okay. It will get absorbed in the bottom here. You want this like a thick pancake consistency. And if you're using weight ratios, that should come out. It should be that consistency. All right, that's it. That's well mixed together. Now you want to put a lid on, but you want it to be loose. You don't want to tighten, just a single turn, just so that it doesn't fall off. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a rubber band around the base of this jar at the level of where my mixture is, because I want to see if this has any rise and fall. That's the yeast kind of bubbling up, eating the sugars, and what'll happen is it will rise at night and then it will fall back down, and you'll see that kind of line when that happens in your starter, and you'll know that you'll have an active yeast. Now that's probably not going to happen the first couple of days that you do this. Again, it depends on how much yeast is in your flour. It depends on how warm your house is, what time of the year it is. They all play into how well your starter gets started, basically. So tomorrow we're going to do the same thing all over again, but the water ratio is going to be a little bit less. And then every day we're going to do this. And this can take anywhere from 5 to 7 days before it's an active yeast that you can use. So tomorrow I'll be back and we will feed this starter. See you then. So it's day 2 of our sourdough starter. And looking at my sourdough that I started yesterday, doesn't look like I had very much activity. Remember, I put that band around the quantity that was already in the jar? Well, didn't rise or fall. That's normal for the first day. It's actually normal for the first couple of days. Another thing that's normal that can happen, doesn't always happen, is the liquid sometimes will separate. And as you can see, if I twirl this around, you can see that it's pretty loose. All you need to do before you get started is just mix that together, and then it'll only take you about 5 minutes to feed this. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to mix this up. That's good enough. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take 75 grams of your starter from yesterday, and you're going to put it in a clean jar. Now, some people will use the same jar, and that's fine. If you've figured out what your weight is of this jar before you started, then just subtract that till you have 75 grams in the jar. Go right ahead. But it's late, and I don't feel like doing the math in my head. So we're just going to start with a new jar. All right, so make sure you zero it out if you're going to start with a clean jar. I'll get my units to grams. And I'm just going to take the starter from yesterday, and I'm going to pour it in here till I get to 75 grams. All right, that's 75 grams. So now we're going to add the same amount of flour, 50 grams of the whole wheat and 50 grams of the all-purpose. I'm just going to zero my scale again. All right, so 50 grams of the whole wheat and 50 grams of the all-purpose. Good. And if you're like a gram over, that's okay. It's not gonna be the end of the world. And the last thing that you need to put in is your water, and it's 125 grams. If you remember yesterday, it was 150, so you're coming down 25 grams from yesterday. And then you're just going to mix it together. All right. I like to scrape down the sides so I can see if I have any activity. So like I said earlier, don't worry, you probably won't get any activity for the first day or two. It's just the yeast is just trying to build in your sourdough. It takes a little time. It depends on weather. It depends on your home environment. It depends on a bunch of things. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the rubber band around here where my level is and just see if I get any activity tomorrow. Tomorrow, you're going to do the same exact thing. 50 grams each of your 2 flours, 125 grams of your warm water, and 75 grams of this starter dough. Okay, and when we come back on day 4, the ratio is going to be a little different. So we'll see you on day 4. There. All right, that's the end of that. So we're on day 4 of the process. Well, in actuality, I'm on day 6 because 2 days ago, I noticed a lot of activity in my sourdough, which is a little unusual for it being just started, and it is winter, so things are a little bit less likely to ferment. And so I checked my sourdough to start the process for day 4 and found out that my sourdough starter had gotten contaminated. There was a foul odor coming from the sourdough. Your sourdough should smell sweet and almost sour-like, and that's why, we call it sourdough. So I had to start all over from the beginning, but today is day 4 of this sourdough, and one thing is going to change. We are going to change the amount of water that we're using for this part of the process. So we're keeping the sourdough the starter the same and the flour the same as we did for days 1, 2, and 3, but our water is changing, okay? So we're gonna start out with 75 grams of sourdough like we did for days 1, 2, and 3. And I'm gonna get my scale on here. Don't forget to zero out your scale. I've done that and that's no fun because then I'm trying to do math in my head, and math when you're frustrated is no fun. All right, so 75 grams. We're keeping the sourdough starter the same. All right, that's 75 grams. We are going to be adding the 50 grams each for a total of 100 grams of the flour again. And one other recommendation I would make is don't throw your discard away for 2 reasons. You can actually use your discard to make other recipes, which I'm going to show you today. I'm going to make a butter parmesan and just a mozzarella cheesy kind of a cracker with it. Simple, easy to do. Plus, if you have a situation where you think that your starter has gone bad or you're getting a foul odor from it, you'll have some reserve that you can keep in the refrigerator to start it all over again like I had to do. Okay, and so for days 1 and 2, we were using 125 grams of water. Today, we're only using 100 grams of water. And you can keep it lukewarm. You just don't want it hot or boiling or anything like that. You just want it a lukewarm or room temperature when you're doing this. And then just mix this well. Another suggestion, don't use anything metal to mix your sourdough. It can have an adverse effect on your yeast. And just make sure that you get this nice and incorporated, that there's no dry bits of flour left in there. And then scrape down the sides so you can see that rise and fall. So you know that your yeast is getting active in your starter. I'm just going to put that right in there. All right, so this is ready. And you're going to repeat this for tomorrow, the same ratio. 50 milligrams of each flour, 100 milligrams now of the water, you're decreasing it, and then 75 grams of the sourdough. Now, don't be alarmed. Don't worry if you're not getting a lot of activity. Like I said, it's normal. It takes a little while, but just keep at it. Keep at the process. It will work. You'll eventually get that nice, bubbly starter, sourdough starter, and you'll start to see, you'll become a little bit more in tune with what it's supposed to look like once you get that activity going, and you'll know when to feed and when to store it. And the other thing is you can do with sourdough is if you get it to that point where you can use it, you want to make a couple of loaves of bread, you can actually put the starter in your refrigerator and keep it in there almost indefinitely, well, indefinitely really, as long as you're feeding it once a week. And we'll get to that steady feed in the next couple of days. Around day 7 is when we're going to change the ratio again. And day 6, we're going to change the ratio. So when I come back, it's going to be a little bit different. And then day 6 and 7, that's really going to be your like basic, here on out, that's how you're going to do your starter, how you're going to feed your starter each time. All right, so let's get this put away. And then I'm going to show you how to make our buttery, cheesy crackers. So while we're waiting for our sourdough to start doing its thing, I figured I'd show you guys a quick recipe for your discard. So I have 1.5 cups of my sourdough discard, and this is 2 days equivalent. So you want to just kind of take that into consideration. You're probably not going to have enough for this recipe with the single day. So you want to make sure that you just put it in the refrigerator, and then the next day you can get about 1.5 cups. So that's what you need for this recipe. So I'm going to get that in the bowl. This is really simple, 3 ingredients. It just makes me feel better not to waste this. If you have animals, you can feed it to your animals, but I like to make some recipes out of it. All right, now 1/3 cup of melted butter. You want to make sure that this is cooled because you don't want to add hot butter to this You'll get more of a crisp kind of consistency. Everything will kind of solidify rather than like a cracker where it breaks and it's nice and fluffy. So you just want to incorporate the butter and the sourdough till you don't see any more butter. So now I'm going to add my cheese. So I have a combination of mozzarella cheese and Parmesan cheese. If you don't like mozzarella, you can use whatever cheeses that you like. So I like Parmesan and I like mozzarella. It's going to give it a little bit of a chewy texture when you use mozzarella. It might give it a little bit more of a flaky cracker if you use only Parmesan, but that's up to you. This is what I like to use. So I'm going to add this. This is a cup total. All right, so you're gonna mix that together. All right, we are all done with these. And then you're gonna add some salt. About a teaspoon. And then I like to add a little salt on top after I spread this out. All right, so you're gonna grab yourself a cookie sheet and you're going to put some parchment paper on it. I'm going to grab my offset spatula if I can find it. I use my spatula to help me get this on here. Now when you start to spread this out, you want to make sure that you spread it even and as thin as you can. All right, you want to get it as even as you can. If you find that you have too much in the pan, take some out, that's okay. You want to make sure that you get it as thin as you can. You almost want to see small areas where you can see the parchment coming through. That way you know it's thin enough that it's ready to be put in the oven. All right, I think this looks good. So we're going to put this in an oven preheated at 325. Just keep an eye on it. You want to cook it for 30 minutes. We're going to take it out of the oven. We're going to score it into whatever size crackers you want. And then we're going to cook it for another 30 minutes until they're golden brown. So I just took the crackers out of the oven. I cooked them for 30 minutes. Then I scored them. Then I put them back in for 30 minutes. I would suggest checking them at about 20 just to make sure that they're not getting too dark. Some people like them darker. You know, it's your preference. I'm going to let these cool completely, and then I'm going to put them in an airtight container. I like to just put a little bit of, you know, some kind of a dip or some spread. You can make it savory, you can, you know, make it sweet, whatever you like, but they're really easy. And it's just another way of using up that sourdough discard, just so you don't throw it away. Now remember, you're going to repeat what we did today with your sourdough starter. And then we're going to meet back on day 6. Well, welcome to day 6. Once you see activity in your starter, you want to check it. And one way to do that is with a water test. So I'm going to check my starter that I've had going for 6 days now. We're on 5 days, we're on day 6 now. So I'm going to take a little bit of this starter and I am going to put it in the water. If the starter floats, that means it's active and ready. If it sinks or if it just dissipates in the water, then you need to keep going. Now, a lot of people will need to do this 6, maybe 7, even 8 times before they get a really good active starter. Don't worry, just keep doing it, keep at it, you'll get it there. All right, so let's see if my starter is ready for baking yet. I just take a little bit and just put it right in the water. And you want to do it gently. You don't want to like splash it down or anything. So it looks like my starter is ready for bread making. I'm going to show you now what you need to do to maintain your starter from here on out. So the measurements are going to stay the same no matter what. Once your starter is good, ready, and bubbly, and it passes the water test. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves a clean jar. I'm going to zero out my scale. And up until now, we've been using 75 grams of starter. Then we went down to 50 grams of starter. Now we're going down to 25 grams of starter. That's going to be your maintenance amount of starter you need each time, every day. If you're going to feed this every day, that's how much starter you're going to put in your jar to start from here on out. That's it. All right, so let's get 25 grams in here. There we go. A little bit more, 27, but that's okay. And then our water and our flour is going to stay exactly the same. It's going to be 100 grams, so 50 and 50 and 100 of water. Now, if you have just whole wheat, you can maintain your starter with whole wheat. If you just have all-purpose flour, you can maintain it with all-purpose flour. Whatever you have, as long as it's unbleached. Remember, it can't be bleached because that's what gives this starter dough that natural yeast so that it works for you. So now I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to add 100 grams of water. And I'm going to add 100 grams of flour, 50 and 50. And that's it. And then tomorrow I will feed this in the morning and I will make a fresh loaf of sourdough bread. Now if you want to see a video on sourdough bread, leave a comment below and I will put a video together on how I make sourdough bread. And you're just going to sit this out just like you've been doing from the very beginning. That's it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it helped you. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for watching. Sourdough start. Going. I stopped and paused.
Start. Okay.
All right. Stay with me. I'm going to start. Like too many starts. Too many starts. Too many starts. What do you do when you're Woo! I was outside. The snow fell off the roof. That was loud. That was ice. Sourdough starter from day one.
So start. So 10 starts.
Okay. How many times can I say start? Oh my gosh. All right.
We're going to do the Nate Kraemer countdown. How many times you say start?
Yeah, we should do that. Oh my gosh. If you missed that, that was the propane one, right? That was his video with the propane?
Propane, yeah. How many
he said
times
it like 12 or 13 times.
Yeah.
I think I beat him already. I think I've said start like 100 times already. Sourdough fails. No. However, really needs... Oh.
I didn't say anything, because just in case you were right.
In case I was right. Thanks, babe. Okay, so then why are you worried about that? That's way back there behind you. Because it's annoying you, that's why. Yeah. Can already see a bubble. I didn't have very much activity, which is not expected. Let me do that again. Is not, wasn't under, okay, all right, take 45. The sourdough starter all over again. Let me try that again.